Yeah. And then just, again, check your phone, turn the volume all the way down, because I know it popped mine back up again.
All right.
All right, we're here. Here we are. And we've got a couple folks joining us. So I would love to introduce all of you to Tiffany Compton. She's a trauma-informed massage therapist. She is studying somatic experiencing. For those of you who do not know what that is, it's a phenomenal way to release trauma through the body. Trauma goes into the body, has to go out through the body sometimes. She's a cuddle party facilitator. She does a lot of different things that are super, super cool. So we'll talk a bit about that, and then talk about her story, which I think has a lot to do with your professional career and why you do what you do and your ongoing work with trauma. So first, can you tell us, what is trauma-informed massage?
Well, trauma-informed massage is really just being aware that we all have different kinds of trauma. There's the little t trauma of just, daily things that are too much too fast for our system. And then the big T trauma of things like sexual assault and our pandemic and affecting us, and different big things when people think of like an accident or like, big stuff. So being aware of that, because a lot of times people will go to receive touch and they're not getting the touch that they want. They're getting the touch that the practitioner thinks they should have.
Right.
And overrides the person's nervous system and overrides their boundaries. And I know for me, when I was seeking out touch, it was really hard to find a practitioner who was sensitive enough to go at a pace that felt right for me and really honored the slowness that my body needed.
Right. That's so important. And you're so very good at that. I know just from getting massages from you, which are phenomenal. And the first time I got a massage from you, I was just blown away. You're like, is the temperature good? Do you need water? Do you need this? Is this okay? I've never been asked so many accommodating questions, and it felt very welcoming. And I think that's part of the trauma informed too. It's like you're really meeting the client where they're at, and you're very much tuning in to their energy and making it a full self-service experience as well. And I see.
I'm getting a little bit of an echo.
Oh, try your volume again. Sometimes it messes with you, but put it all the way down again on the phone. That might help. And Vanessa's saying her connection's in and out. Like I said, Vanessa, earlier, I think that there might be generalized internet issues right now with the solar flares. That's a guess, because it took us a little while to connect as well. Maybe it's better if you go on your computer on YouTube. We're live there too. Natasha Edwina, just Googled Natasha Edwina YouTube and it'll show. Or just, hang out here and keep trying. And thanks for everybody else too that joined. Okay, so trauma-informed massage. So we're talking about how that works. I have to say too, I have a history of sexual abuse at a very young age. And I was very consciously aware that I needed to relearn touch. I needed to relearn healthy touch. And even though it was scary for me, massage is the first way that I did it, because I trusted the practitioner to, keep those boundaries. And I was in my early 20s and I didn't have much money at the time. And so I went to a school. I think it was like only $5 or $10 for a massage. Is amazing. This is in Phoenix, Arizona, like 20 years ago. But it really did. It really helped me recalibrate my nervous system. And the more that I learned in my PhD in mind-body medicine, I learned more about the nervous system, more about the body, more about how trauma affects the nervous system and how we heal trauma through healing and calming the nervous system. So massage is such a big piece of that. But I'm wondering if now is a good time to go into your story. And there's so many different elements of your story, so I'm not even sure where to start. And I think anywhere we start is going to be perfect and beautiful, but there's so many pieces of it that shaped who you are today and what you've been through. And so I'll let you start where you'd like to start.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, I'll start off with throat because some people who are listening might be wondering, her voices and her breathing is kind of loud. So I always throw that out there so people can know what that noise is of my noisy breathing.
Mhm.
So in 2005, before, I attempted suicide and I was in a coma for a week. And when I was in a coma, the tube that was breathing for me, it damaged my trachea. And when I woke up, I kept having breathing problems. I kept telling the doctors, I can't breathe, something's wrong.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, you're just having anxiety and you'll be fine. Here's some pills. And I said, no, something's really wrong. I can't breathe. And after a couple of months of complaining, I finally got to see a specialist. I saw an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he says, you have a rare condition and you need an emergency tracheostomy. Would you like me to call an ambulance or do you have a ride? And so after multiple emergency room visits and not being listened to and downplayed my breathing issue that no one believed because all the numbers looked normal when I would go to the doctor, finally I was able to get the care I needed. But that was when I got the tracheostomy, I couldn't talk for about a month and had a lot of surgery. I had like 12 surgeries on my trachea and a tracheostomy for 2 years. And before that point, I used to be a singer, and sometimes I even did professional singing, and I was a swimmer and a lifeguard and very fit and athletic. So my life just got flushed in the toilet and said, you're going to start over. You're not going to be doing those things anymore. So that was a big wake-up call.
Mhm.
And I think it may have even not may, it started even before that. I was in a marriage, abusive marriage, and my husband didn't like the attention that my singing would bring from other men, even if it was just a compliment. It could be some old guy at church playing the organ, and he'd be like, wow, that was really beautiful. And my husband would take that not well, and it didn't land well for me. It wasn't safe.
Mhm.
So I prayed to God one day and said, God, please take away my singing voice. And
Mm.
God said, don't ask for that, you'll regret it. And I said, oh no, God, my marriage is more important. I made covenants and I intend to keep them. I'm going to finish my covenant, my marriage. And
Because you were involved in the Mormon church at this point.
yeah, I was a Mormon at that time.
Mhm.
And when I said that prayer, I forgot about it and just stopped singing. And then a couple years later is when I had the tracheostomy. I
Wow.
remembered it maybe like a year after the tracheostomy.
And you also, just from knowing you, I know you have a very powerful sexual energy as well, that even before your Kundalini awakening experience likely was there. And I imagine that had a lot to do with the jealousy that your husband was experiencing too. And so it wasn't just your singing voice, but it's probably like your singing voice is projecting that energy, right? Or attracting.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I find that just my life force energy in general is very powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really confusing for a lot of people, and a lot of people
Yes.
take it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people get really confused because they're like, what is this? What, they're not used to being near it or being touched by it.
Mm-hmm.
And so needing to like normalize that for myself and deprogram a lot of shame about my body,
Mm-hmm.
because it really trained me to disassociate because it wasn't safe being Mormon and having all of this stuff moving through me and that wasn't allowed. And so I had so much shame about my body that I wanted to mutilate myself, and I did sometimes do that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I trained my body to disassociate to the point where I'd become catatonic. And then I would go in and out of psychiatric hospitals and being put on drugs because I didn't know how to handle this intense energy, and it wasn't allowed in my religion. And then when I started having psychic opening and like psychic vision and other things, there's not really room for that sort of thing. And
Then you must be demon possessed if that's the case,
oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had people cast demons out of me as well. We got to give her drugs, then give her demon blessing, exorcism kind of a thing. And
well, the mental health community is really kind of interesting because there's the diagnostic and statistical manual of disorders, and that's our Bible, our guidebook to diagnose people. And so when you're a student, so like when I was going through my master's in marriage and family therapy, and you're looking at all these diagnostic criteria because you have to memorize them to pass the licensing exams, everybody's like, oh, that's me. I have this, I have this, I have this. But really, it's just an extreme, like they're normal human characteristics, but when it's at an extreme level and you stay stuck there, that's when it becomes a diagnosis. But I think sometimes the mental health community gets really overly ambitious about pinning those labels onto people without maybe considering other spiritual phenomena or whatever else. And I know, even in my own Kundalini awakening, Rick saying DSM-5, yes, exactly. And and then and then Norma said, thank you for sharing, love you, sister. Thank you for that support, Norma, to Tiffany. And so you can get a little over ambitious. And I know when I was going through my Kundalini awakening, I even, as a clinician, I'm looking at some of the symptoms, like, and you said started having these psychic phenomena. I was having psychic phenomena as well. Premonitions, I could kind of read, I could tune into certain loved ones, and I could kind of almost like see through their eyes and feel what they were experiencing. And it's a little destabilizing, right? And it also happened to me when I was going through intense stress, trauma, control, an abusive, emotionally abusive relationship, gaslighting. All this stuff is really just pushing me to that edge. And I almost had to sort of dissociate as well to keep myself mentally safe and not let all of that garbage into my mind space, right? And so I can understand. And I remember thinking like, okay, I'm either going through a psychotic break right now, or I'm just like being surrounded in angels and they're just like sending me all kinds of love. And so I chose the latter for my story until I had evidence otherwise. And I kind of kept to myself a little bit and didn't tell too many people what I was experiencing because of that tendency, right, to pathologize. And so I
just say something really? I really love what you were saying earlier about not getting stabbed, because that's so critical for trauma. Like that's the key thing, because normalizing all of our feelings and experiences and sensations, it's all normal, even the really extreme stuff. But you don't want it to stay like that. Like you don't want 20 feet of snow burying your house 365 days out of the year. Like that's not normal or healthy. If that happens, every once in a while, that's kind of normal. Maybe depending on where you live, and it's like that with our feelings. And not to shame our feelings. I just got to go, I have big feelings in every direction. They're big, and that's okay.
That's why, when I met you, I was like, hey, sister, you feel big too. Oh, you have, a lot of energy pulsing through you too. Like, that's really cool. I think that in our society, we can look at a woman and call her crazy or irrational or erratic, and we don't look at what she's tolerating. We don't look at the pressure and the force that's like smushing her and forcing her down. Oh shoot, my camera, I'm moving too much again. I get so passionate, moving too much again, and my camera's getting fuzzy on YouTube. It'll come
that's
back.
what I love about menstrual cycle awareness. That's another offering that I'll be giving soon, is period coaching, because I love that, because it normalizes the feminine experience, that we are not the same. We're not linear beings. We're not going to have the same feeling, the same experience. We're not going to be the same person.
Every day is different depending on what cocktail of hormones are pulsing through our menstrual cycle that particular day. Yeah, we go in 28-day cycles, not 24-hour cycles like men. And then we're forced to be in this linear, more masculine world, and you only look at the effects of what we're dealing with rather than the whole context and milieu of what we're dealing with. And in your case, you had this massive oppression from the Mormon church, from a narcissistic spouse, from all of these things. And you were really turning that inward. You were trying to stomp out yourself, really, instead of, because you didn't recognize, because that's all you knew, that was the problem, right?
Yeah. And the more I am being able to be exposed and hear about the experience of other people like us, I just go, wow, I'm normal. Like most of it, we're all just pretty normal for the most part. There's, I would say, very few true cases of mental illness. I think it's really a lack of self-acceptance, lack of skills, or severely lacking in skills.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before, about how it'd be so much more beneficial, instead of having support groups where people go and complain every week about their problems and repeat their complaining problems week after week after week. Go and learn skills. What can you do with these problems? Turn your complaint into a request, because you can keep complaining, or you can figure out, what do I want instead?
Exactly.
I could wave a magic wand and have exactly what I wanted, what I asked for.
Right. And so the title of our episode today is Boundaries That Create Freedom. And I came up with that title because you have such impeccable boundaries. And I think one of those is, sometimes you'll text me and you'll say, can I don't know the exact words you use, but can I like complain for a moment, or can I do, and you ask permission, and I forget to do that, because sometimes, like, I've done it to you before. I've been like in a rage and I just like rah, 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 and I just shoot off something in a text message, and I'm a therapist, I'm supposed to know better, right? But it's like you get in that moment and you forget to ask permission to have somebody hold space, or to hold that space. So I really appreciate that you ask, and even if you didn't ask, I would get to it when I could, and then hold space for you. But it's really beautiful, a practice to practice asking for consent, and then you have your moment to unleash, and you had some beautiful rage that I got to witness last week.
Yes,
and you even posted about
it
and you even posted about it on Facebook and shared it with a bunch of people. And then you move on, because the deeper you feel it, the easier you can move past it. And I know some people are like, oh, you're in victim mode or whatever else, but unless you dive totally deep, if you keep having people say, stop being a victim, you never get to fully feel the extent of that feeling. So just share with us what you did with a book and 9 Inch Nails.
It's just really angry.
Yeah.
And I was feeling this anger, and then deeper I would go into it, then it would go into grief. So I was bouncing from like, I feel like I'm going to explode and I want to light my entire house on fire, to I'm just going to collapse and cry and melt away in tears. And it wasn't I was stuck in that. I thought, all right, I'm just going to go into it, and then I can move through, because I was just feeling it getting bigger and bigger. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Turn up the 9 Inch Nails. And I got out my bat and I started screaming and cussing and beating couch cushions.
And let's tell people, you actually have 5 different kinds of bats.
I have a couple different.
You have a plastic.
I have a plastic wiffle bat,
Yeah.
and I have an aluminum bat. Its name is Maniac. It's actually on the bat. It was like custom for me. It went to the store as the last one. It was on sale.
Perfect.
So yeah, I'm whacking the cushions and screaming, and then I get on the floor, and like your 2-year-old that falls on the floor at Target. You have to pick them up because they're like, ah! I was doing that.
Yeah.
And then and then I wanted to rip apart a book, so I got a book and I just started ripping it, and I was throwing the pages and then throwing them on the floor. It's like showering paper. And then I got tired, and then took a bath, and then I cried for maybe a half hour to an hour, and then I was fine.
Right. Ta-da. And then you texted me bragging about it, and I was like, well done. That's sexy as fuck. Okay. That's great.
And some people on Facebook were like, what's wrong? Are you okay? Like, I'm all good. This is my art, friends,
Well, and that's another example of your boundaries is when I saw your post, you're like, I don't need any, I don't need
Oh yeah.
anything. I just want to share this kind of thing. So as not to put any concern onto anyone else, because sometimes when we share publicly that sort of thing and we don't have a solution or let people know that we're okay, then they kind of feel like they have to hold our problems,
Yeah.
right? And so you're very aware of that and not making
Mhm.
sure that's not the energy of your share.
Yeah. Well,
And
being really clear on what I want and then
yeah,
asking for it. So
yes.
not just going with a here's a problem and I'm gonna put it on your plate and make you guess what to do with it.
Mhm,
I'm gonna say, I'm having an issue. Are you available to hear about it?
mhm,
And if you say yes, I say, okay, I'm having an issue about da da da, and I'm looking for this kind of support.
mhm,
Can you do that via text or a call or in
mhm.
person? And then
Yeah.
I wait for the yes or no, and then I get my need met that way.
Mhm.
I get exactly what I need. It's so
You're
amazing.
very good at getting your needs met. And I think about, some people might be listening to this now and like, oh wow, if they were to witness you doing that, they're gonna think you're crazy, you're going insane or whatever else. But you could spend a couple hours doing that, or you could just try to keep the lid on the pot and go start 10 fights on Facebook and
Oh yeah,
feel
that's when you're
resentful
with
and develop
someone
it.
and you can tell they're on edge and you're, hey, are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm fine. And then like cold
Mhm,
shoulder and being really nasty and
mhm.
passive aggressive, or they just slam doors or give you the silent
Which
treatment.
is the stereotype of women. The stereotype that women are like, "Is everything okay? I'm fine." That sort of thing, because we
Mhm.
we often aren't told that we can express ourselves, or we aren't given space, or we're told that we're too much, or we're not enough, and all of this. So women, they learn to like you said, numb out, dissociate, shove it
Here,
down,
let
push it
me eat
down.
food. Let
Mhm,
me take
mhm.
pills. Let me, you know,
Yeah.
obsessively exercise.
And to be clear, men might even be more repressed than us because they're not even allowed to have the feelings in the first place.
Uh,
Women aren't always allowed to express them, but men aren't even allowed to have them. So they don't even get that far. So I think it's a problem with all of us, and having those emotions that you're constantly shoving down, whether it be grief or anger or sadness, it does eventually start to develop health issues.
mhm,
It takes decades to grow a cancer tumor, folks. It takes
uh,
decades to develop heart disease of a
oh yeah,
chronic
I know all
pattern.
about that. I mean, like, and that's my story with the cake, the
Mm.
healing with cake. And so I used to have anaphylactic food allergies, and I was allergic to life. I had chemical sensitivities, and I couldn't really ever go out to eat or eat anything if someone else made it because I was highly allergic to everything, and eczema all over my skin, open sores. And right before, like a couple months before my Kundalini awakening, I had a spontaneous healing. And it was when I cut all energetic ties with my ex husband. Even though we were divorced, I saw I needed to cut those ties because they were making me sick. And I realized it wasn't what I was allergic to, it was who I was
Mm.
allergic to.
Mm.
And
Yes.
me allowing it, me um, continuing to relate in a way that wasn't good for me. He can be whoever he wants to be, but I don't need to go be near that. I can
Mhm.
go over here and do this other thing.
Mhm.
And um, so, really getting in my body and cultivating discernment started with saying no to this thing that wasn't good for me because I had this vision and saw,
Mhm.
nope, no more. And then the first thing that I ate was pizza and a chocolate cake with red food dye number 5 or whatever, one that's going to make your brain explode and you're going to get cancer,
Right.
and a chocolate bar and all these naughty foods that you're not supposed to eat that are toxic. But it really showed me to really embrace life. And it's more about the relationship and the why than the what. So I'm not saying, I'm not advocating to anyone to go out if you're having health issues and say, oh, Tiffany did this thing, I'm going to try it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, look at why you do things and what is your relationship.
Mhm.
And is that serving you? Is that bringing vitality to your life? or is it diminishing it? Because when I connect with food or people in a way that brings vitality, I'm healthy and I don't need an EpiPen anymore. After that day, I never needed an EpiPen. I never had allergies. I don't have any food restrictions. And I went from severe food restrictions to I can eat whatever. And it's really about really deep respect, love, and boundaries again of having loving relationships with myself and others. And
Mhm.
if people don't want to meet me there, then I'll go where I'll find that. I don't need to go to the people who are going to make my life harder. I'll go where it feels good.
Yeah, so you realize a lot of your sensitivities and allergies were a person and the
Uh,
energy chaos that they created in your life. And once you unsubscribe to that, it was like you could engage with food in a new way. And I love that. Healing with chocolate cake. I mean, we would all probably love to do that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit more about how what brought your kundalini awakening on. What's the timeline, because you're feeling pressured in your marriage and the church. How did you escape the Mormon church? How did you escape your marriage? And then it sounds like your kundalini awakening was just after
Hmm.
that, actually. So
Yeah, I left my marriage in January 2011,
mhm.
and then the divorce was finalized January 2013. And I was still receiving spousal support. The abuse still continued through there, with needing to continue to submit to these really humiliating examinations that were very invasive for the court to, prove. I had to prove basically that I was sick enough to keep this money
Mm,
because I was on disability.
mhm,
And um, eventually, and I was so sick that I had a caregiver. I had a caretaker some days was full time and some days was part time. And it was either that or be in an institution. And um, I told my caretaker one day, and this was after a deposition with my ex-husband. So this was in January 2016. And I told her one day, I said, part of you wants us to say, forget it, keep your money. It's not even worth it. Because the stress was like, I would just start thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to get off disability. I'm going to get better. And I'd make like my little progress. And then it would all come crumbling back down again. And she looked at me and she just says, well, why don't you? And I said, I'm disabled. I need this money or I'm not going to be able to support myself. I'm going to pay for my doctors. I don't want to live in an institution.
mhm,
I need to pay for my caregiver
mhm,
and my foods because I'm allergic to everything. And she looked at me straight in the eye and she said, Tiffany, God has better things in store for you than to be tied to an abusive narcissist the rest of your life. And that was the first time someone gave me permission to do something that was crazy,
mhm.
the not responsible thing. And I was just like, that's right. And she saw the wheels turning and she just says, I'm going to leave early today because I can see something's working here in you. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And so I prayed and meditated and journaled a lot that night. And the next morning I woke up really early. And it was the first day that I was able to like shower and put on clothes and myself and even did my hair and makeup. I was like, wow, I'm feeling good. I'm showing up for myself today. And as I sat down to begin meditating in a journal, I had a vision. And in my vision, it was a near death like experience. And I saw all the reasons why I got sick.
Mhm.
And I saw how I could get better. And that meant that I needed to not have spousal support. And I thought, well, then I'll just cut off spousal support today because then I start getting better today. And and then my caregiver came maybe a few minutes later after I like finally the vision completed. And she says, whoa, what happened? What happened? Because I looked totally different. And I told her what happened. And she said, today's my last day, huh? And I said,
Mm.
yeah. And it was so miraculous. I had all my friends taking pictures of me because I looked totally different. I mean, regardless of hair and makeup being done,
Mhm.
it took years off of my face and my body, just this deep relief of not having this energetic tie anymore. And then 2 days after that vision is when I had the pizza and cake experience, and I had no more need for an EpiPen. So I gifted my EpiPen to a friend who had anaphylaxis. And then a couple weeks later, when I went into church, I walked in and I just thought, I'm an alien. I don't belong here. And it was so weird and unexpected. No one was more surprised than me because I was a door knocker, pass out Book of Mormon, do things by the Book of Mormon. And so I was super confused. I didn't know why that happened, but it no longer fit. When I was able to heal things that I had worked so hard and did everything by every rule possible. Let me follow every rule to heal, do all the right things, ethical, responsible eating. And then I did the most not follow the rule thing. I don't hear anyone saying go eat GMOs and chemicals and you're going to get better. But it did for me. And so something in that just like shifted. And when I went into church, it just didn't fit. And I couldn't go back and I didn't know what was happening. So that started my faith crisis. And I just stopped going because I didn't know what else to do. I'm like, this is weird. And I was able to still email my caregiver. She was an ex-Jehovah Witness, so she helped mentor me a little bit with like how to have a faith transition.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after that, I was getting ready to move to San Diego. And now it's about May 2016, and I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. I had no idea what that was. I didn't know about chakras. I didn't know about Kundalini. I might have attended like a few little yoga classes that were more just like stretching in a doctor office clinic kind of a thing. It was like I didn't know what any of that was.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved from LA to San Diego, and all the woo-woo people started finding the and found people like you and be like, oh, that's what that is. And I go, okay, helping me integrate that. And that was a rough couple of years of integration because my body was doing a lot of weird things like intense shaking that looked like grand mal seizures and my energy all over the place. And so that's a whole that's a whole thing there. And then yeah, so that's kind of the progression of things.
Was there one thing that you can think of that triggered the Kundalini awakening?
Um, I fell after returning from a trip and I fractured a bone in my face. And I was getting cranial sacral therapy for that to help heal. And when I was healing the bone that fractured, one day I just went to the cranial sacral therapist and I'm like, something's going on with my body. Like it's loud down there. Like stuff's happening. Things are happening.
That's a good way of putting it.
And she held space and facilitated a conversation with my womb and my other lady parts. And it was deeply transformative for me. And that was the first time I'd ever had a conversation with different parts of my body where I addressed them directly. And that was my first experience with parts work. Parts work is really powerful for people with trauma, by the way. I'm not saying you have a Kundalini awakening, but it's really just, it's good for integration and healing. And so that was the beginning of me coming into my body and having deep love and respect for my body. Because the vision that I saw when I started conversing with my womb was frightening. I saw someone who looked very sick, like it was like a person dying in hospice kind of a thing. that had been sorely neglected. And so my body was just like, this is not working. The way that you're shutting me down and treating me bad and talking bad and disassociating with me to create alliances, friendships, not just in the womb, but everywhere. And it began this process of integration and love.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a deep love experience. I felt like I gave birth. I'd never given birth, but from what I hear about it, covered in sweat and this deep love, you're exhausted and elated. And it felt like every joint was unhinged. And I didn't know it was possible to love that much. And I was just overcome by so much love. It brought me to tears. And it was a very powerful experience. And so bringing that into my healing work, that love, because it allowed me to hold opposites. It allowed me to love things that I felt were unlovable, that felt so shameful, because I also had a history of sexual trauma growing up and at a very young age when I was 5. So that combined with all of the sexual oppression in the church and just being able to be with the parts that feel the most unlovable, the most unacceptable, the most damaged, and loving them like this beautiful newborn baby. We were just like, you're perfect, I love you. And it was like that.
So it sounds like it was a series of awakenings to your own body, to your own needs. And then it's like, as you are getting more comfortable with listening to the sensations of your body, you are also listening to this divine guidance and being shown visions. And that it was sort of accelerating until one day you just had this divine love experience that completely overtook your energy system.
Yeah, the cranial sacral appointment that happened, and then it was like 3 or 4 days later when I had that grand thing, and then that took several years to integrate. And even still, most Kundalini people, they know, like it'll pop back up again every once in a while, like, oh yeah.
Yeah, or leave sometimes too, which is just as unsettling, right? Because like, wait, where did it go?
Yeah.
It
teaches you to not attach,
right?
Surrender, and going with the flow. What is present right now?
A lot of people that I've spoken to, and as you know, I'm doing my PhD dissertation on this experience. What is the experience of a Kundalini awakening? And so that's partly why I've started the show too, is to kind of have more general conversations about it, to break up the heavy duty research and whatnot. But a lot of people that I've talked to, or the people that I've talked to, I shouldn't say, there's probably not a lot of them, but the commonalities so far seem to be intense pressure or trauma, like really like a pressure cooker, like a vice. I had a guest on here, Devonte Sheard, about talking about his Kundalini awakening, and he calls it, there's something that happens that puts enough pressure that there's a Kundalini pop, and you just you can't take it anymore. But what I'm noticing is there is some sort of like energetic treatment or something that is just like the straw that broke the camel's back. For me, it was a past life regression session. For you, it was cranial sacral. For him, I think he was doing a lot of meditation, and he was actually learning some different techniques. But even last night, so I did a little mini new moon ceremony. I was feeling not so good the last couple of days, just feeling very stuck. And I was even telling a friend, I can feel, speaking of talking to the parts, and I think even told you this during my last massage, is there's like a lot of stuck energy, even around my womb area. And I think you were feeling it even in my thighs and things like that. And I happened to listen to this astrological report today by Pam Gregory. And she said, what's going on astrologically right now is we're all almost going through this kind of birth experience that you were just referring to, because she's like, it's like the baby's coming down the birth canal. She's like, this is the only thing I can really compare it to. The baby's coming down the birth canal, and it won't go back up. The baby might get stuck, but it can't go back. So whatever we're dealing with here in 2020, we're not going back. There's no going back. But we're a little bit stuck right now. And so it's about, how are we going to push through to give birth? And I thought, how amazing is that because it just really correlates with what I'm actually feeling even in my womb space. And I've been aware of this sensation, but I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. Is it me? Is it this collective energy? What's going on? So that was comforting to hear that today. But I did a little new moon ceremony. It was very basic with a friend, and we just lit a candle, and we took some like essential oil essences or whatnot, and it's really about setting intentions. And we sort of blessed our projects. And for me, it's been my pilot study, my PhD dissertation. For him, it was a new startup, that business or whatever that he's working on. And we did just this very basic exercise to raise the Kundalini. And it was about, you put your arms, palms up like this, you say certain phrases, and then it's basically like you're doing little Kegels, like contracting, contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. And it was only a minute. And after a minute of doing that, my whole body was like shaking, like you're saying. And I'm like, whoa, I can't believe I brought that back so quickly. And then I was all excited because I'm like, I had no idea that I had that kind of manifesting power. And so then today I felt that surge of energy. I woke up feeling refreshed because the Kundalini was stirred again. And they said, and I'm looking at a guide of like how to do this. And it's talking about stirring imagining the serpent, the coil at the base of your spine, and it, swirling and coming up your spine. And so I'm imagining all of this. I finished my human subjects certification I've been stuck at for a long time. I think everything's popping off today. Things are happening today. And I think that's the power of Kundalini. And I think that's another thing that people should be aware of when they get a massage with you. You are a Kundalini person. Your energy is very strong. And when I've gotten massages or just spent time with you, it enhances my energy. I mean, I leave feeling fired up. I leave feeling juicy. I leave feeling, balanced and optimistic and excited about life and passionate. And that's not something maybe that every massage therapist or every energy worker is going to experience. And I have another, she does Reiki, another dear friend who does Reiki, and she had a meditative experience with Jesus Christ. So she had in my Kundalini awakening, I had an experience with Jesus Christ as well. So there's like this unconditional love energy that you're talking about. I see that as synonymous with Christly type love, right? So anyway, I feel like people that, and I'm not saying that people are any better, that one human is better than another person, but people that have had this experience, it's an infusion of energy that can then be shared. And it's meant to be shared. It's meant to elevate people. It's love. It's meant to be spread. And that is an extra potency that happens, I think, in your massage sessions and her Reiki sessions and my hypnosis sessions. We're doing deep energy work. It's not just surface level. It's going to the cosmos.
And I have other offerings that are less touch and more space between people, virtual sessions, and also doing touch therapy, because sometimes that might be too intense for some people, and being respectful of their boundaries and their pacing, letting people choose the pace.
Yeah. So another thing I want to bring up is tell us more about the cuddle parties, because I know I'd heard of this a few years back before I knew you. And I thought, now what the heck is this? This is interesting. I think I might have seen it on a documentary or whatever. I'm like, could I do that? And I'm like, probably not. I don't have enough trust for other people to not take it further, or maybe even myself. But once I talked to you about it, I was just blown away, because it seems like the ultimate PhD level of boundaries and consent. So I started with massage, getting massage to work on feeling safe with touch. But if you can get into a situation where you are cuddling and you're practicing your no, you're practicing your yes, it can be incredibly healing for people who have had their boundaries violated physically through assault or sexual abuse, or especially when we were little and we didn't know the difference, or we didn't know we could say no, and we're just very confused, and there's power exerted over us. So say a little bit more about being a cuddle party facilitator.
I attended my first cuddle party with Adam Paulman in January 2017. And I loved it. It was the first time I was in a room full of people and I felt safe to be in my body. And I had never had that feeling before. Of this very deep, like, it's okay to be in here. Like, it's all right. I'm okay. And I didn't have to be hyper vigilant. And I could just relax and enjoy being with people. And a cuddle party, you never have to cuddle with anyone ever.
Mhm.
Ever. You don't touch someone unless you ask and get a clear verbal yes. And cuddling can look many ways. It could be sitting next to someone and having a conversation with them.
Mhm.
It could be holding someone's hand. It could be having your hair brushed. And the option to do nothing at all. You could take a nap the whole time.
Mhm.
You can write in your journal. You could practice saying no. There's people who come and will say no because they want to practice that and have that be all right. And
Mhm.
every time someone asks them something, they'll say no, or they can be kind of playful with it. Like, yeah, I'm here to practice saying no. So I would really love for people to ask me a lot and
Mhm.
ask really enticing things.
Mhm.
So I can really practice no. And it's really a playground for people to practice consent in a platonic way. So you're fully clothed, wearing fairly modest clothing. Like there's no like bikinis or
Mhm.
sexy lingerie. It's like normal clothes that you would wear going to the store.
Mhm.
And um, and it's just beautiful connection. So sometimes I've been and people might be just having really lovely conversation. Or one recent cuddle party I went to, there was a group of people holding hands and we're sitting on the floor and our knees are touching, and we just were running energy through our hands, and it was just really yummy. And getting compliments,
Mhm.
asking for compliments, or getting a massage. I love going and bringing my hairbrush because that's like one of my favorite things ever, having my hair played with.
Mhm.
And so, brushing my hair, please, braid it. And
Mhm.
um, it's just really lovely and yummy to practice asking for things and saying no and learning how to deal with no,
Mhm.
how to receive a no graciously
Mm.
and responding to the no, understanding that the no to me is not a me no to me, it's they're saying yes to themselves.
Right.
And so thanking the person for taking care of themselves, thanking the person for expressing themselves clearly, thanking them for um, being true to themselves, and
Absolutely.
deep gratitude. Like, it feels yucky to be with someone when they're just kind of halfway there and like they don't really want to be there. Like, ugh,
When they say yes
go.
but didn't mean it. Yeah.
No,
Well,
I don't.
or they're doing it out of guilt or whatever else. And I could see that being emotionally so helpful, even when it's not to do with physical consent. Because I feel like at this point in my life, I'm pretty good with my physical boundaries, but even emotionally, being in a helping profession, being a therapist, being an emotional healer, it
Mhm.
is still hard for me to not respond when I get requests. And so sometimes I'll get a series of requests from people in my personal life for some help or assistance or whatever,
Mhm.
which I love to do. But sometimes it falls on like when I have a deadline or I'm up against a wall or whatever else. And I hate to say no. And sometimes I'll prioritize others' needs before my own because I want to put the cape on and rush to help out, right? And I have a lot of nurturing, mothering energy, but it's a constant thing to
Uh,
set boundaries, ignore text messages. Not and I'm not going to ignore a text message of somebody that's in my inner circle, but people that I do not have a
uh,
relationship with, ignoring DMs, these sorts of things. It's like it's taken lots of time to not engage with that or to say no when I'm sorry but no, and I love
well,
that phrase, no is a complete
you don't
sentence.
even need to
Don't even
apologize.
say sorry. Yeah.
No is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
Not needing a reason. Maybe,
Mhm.
if it's someone in a really close circle,
Mhm.
a reason can help cultivate intimacy sometimes.
Right.
So
But
people
because you
know.
want to show them that you care and that I honestly, I want people to come to me if they need something. That I value
Yeah,
that in a relationship. I value connection so much. So I appreciate being there, but not when it's one-sided, you
yeah,
know.
and also ability to change your mind. I love that about cuddle too.
Yes,
Like
yes.
you could be doing something for 5 minutes or 5 seconds, and
Hmm.
if it doesn't feel good anymore, like you're really
Hmm.
encouraged to be like, you know what, I thought I would like that, but I don't anymore, or I'm tired, or I'm complete, or
Right.
thank you very much. I'd like to get up and cuddle with someone else now. And
I appreciate that so much. And I mean, you're so good at that. And I have a few therapists and coach friends that, they're real good with their boundaries too. And I had one friend who offered me something. And then several weeks later, when I said, okay, I think I'll take you up on it. And she said, actually, I was rethinking it and it just doesn't feel aligned, and I'll tell you why. And so she, she's like said no, and then
yeah,
she gave me an explanation that was very reasonable. And she said, I hope you can understand that I like to keep the energy clean. And I said, you don't even know like how much I appreciate that is a priority for me too, keeping the energy clean. I'd rather hear that no than okay, yeah, and then have some sort of
and there's resentment after.
resentment or weirdness or whatever else. So I really, really appreciate that. And I wanted to ask you too. I know we're running a little bit out of time. We'll see how long the Instagram lets us go. But I want to say something or ask you about the skills, because we're talking about the skills. I do a 10-week
Mhm.
mind body skills group, which is that it's like allowing your expression of what's troubling you but not focusing on it, and then you learn a skills to kind of transmute it. And you and I have talked about, you've been in probably every kind of group there is, and you got therapized a million times, and at a certain
Yeah.
point you're like, wait a minute, like you can see what doesn't work with
Oh
therapy
yeah.
and what does work.
Oh
But
yeah. My dad would sometimes be appalled with some of the therapists and psychiatrists. He's like, you're smarter than they are. Like, yeah.
well, you have a lot of natural ability and to be in tune with people. And so I want people that maybe are watching this to know that there's little things that we've already discussed tonight that we
Mhm.
can practice. And then the reason that you or I got to where we're at now with some of this boundary setting is because of our own personal growth work as well, and being in these
Yeah.
situations and seeing what went wrong or what went right, and learning the skills to navigate this. And
Yeah.
so is there anything off the top of your head that you're thinking that maybe was the most valuable, or was it just a mix of different experiences that got you to this point where you're really good at your boundaries?
Ooh. I had completed a relationship. Ended a dating relationship and realized after I had gone on just one date, and I thought, nope, I am going to start dating myself. And in the process of dating myself, I realized how I had so much codependency still. And I decided to have a funeral. And so I had a funeral for that part of me where it was like really
Mm.
time to let that go. And I went to the beach on last Thanksgiving in the rain. It was pouring, it was freezing, and I'm screaming in my swimsuit, jumping in the ocean. And people are looking at me like, what is that girl doing? Like, rebirthing.
Mm.
And I before that I did a little ritual at home, and I wrote some stuff down and burned it and released the ashes in the ocean. And at that time, that old me felt like I needed to have permission to be a selfish bitch. So I'm like, I'm embracing my selfish bitch archetype. And I sent out a text to all my friends. I said, you're probably going to see my behavior change. Just want to let you know. Welcome, selfish bitch. Like, I'm having a funeral for people pleaser.
Hmm.
And now I don't really see it as selfish bitch. I see it as self love, being in integrity,
Hmm.
making sure that my no means no, my yes means yes, that my words and actions align,
Hmm.
and that I don't give something to someone else if it means it's causing harm to Tiffany.
Mm.
And I was no longer willing to do that. So a lot of the people before, like when you're with narcissists and those kind of people, you're taking their supply away. So they're going to label you all the labels, selfish bitch, who do you think you are, da, da, da. And I realize now, like the good people in my life, the healthy people, like you, they're just like, wow, thank you. It feels so much better to be with someone who like is really clear.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to guess. It's just like
It feels
easy.
safe. It's at ease, because we're intuitive too. And so when you, like you're saying, state your desires, or you say, I'm up for visiting for 2 hours and I'll help you with this, or we'll do this, but I'm not into that, or whatever else. It's like, oh, cool. Okay. And then you don't have to worry about things, going overboard or encroaching or whatever else. And I just feel like when I'm with you, my nervous system is just like, feels safe to be here. Like, and I know that whatever truth I have that I need to express, it's going to be held and well received, whatever it is. And like I was saying in the promo to this show too, you're the sort of person that, you're not ever going to put your truth on somebody else. You're going to allow them to have their truth. And we're in a very divisive time right now in many different ways. And I think that, this skill that you have, if everybody in the world could learn this, I mean, we could have world peace, because it's okay for us to be different. And nobody's telling you have to hang out with this different person 5 days a week, or maybe you do if you work together, but it's still your choice whether you want to stay in that job or whatnot, or that marriage or whatever else. And so I think that's a very just, nervous system relaxing quality that you have.
Yeah. And I think also when I attended the School of Consent, and I love this about Betty Martin, and she talked about receiving, and a lot of us are labeled as bad receivers. And there's nothing wrong with your receiving. You're perfectly capable of receiving just fine. You just, it's not what you want. If you don't, and you don't have to learn, you don't have to learn to like something if you don't want to. You don't have to like it. It's not what you want. So if you don't like being touched that way, great. What do you like? How do you want to be touched? If you don't like that food, if you don't like that belief, whatever. And there's nothing wrong with you, whatever feeling you have. And so it just removes all of the shame and judgment and the right and the wrong, because it's not, it's what do you want? Keeps coming back
Right.
to what do you want? And if you're noticing, I don't know what I want, I just know a lot of things that I don't want. Great. Super. Well, then you're like, can start working from there and noticing what you don't want, and how could you frame it into getting closer to what you do, and to a request. If you could like wave a magic wand and magically have everything be the way you would like it. And maybe it won't happen. Like this is like another thing that trips people up, is they think, well, I know what I want, but I can't have it right now. That's fine. That's okay. What can you do to give yourself that for 1 minute or 1%? If you can't do it all the time or 100%, give yourself that much. And that will carry you through until it can grow. That's how
Well,
you feed it.
that's a very self-loving practice. And I think a lot of times we forget that we can have what we want, and I think back to like some childhood experiences. Even, for instance, I have a sensitivity to onions. So when I eat them, especially raw ones, I get belly aches. It's very painful. Right. And so, and I don't enjoy the taste of them either. So it works out pretty well for me to avoid onions, except that when you eat out, they're everywhere, and all the good foods have them, like guacamole and, tacos and all this stuff. And, growing up, my mom used to say, and people in my life have said too, like, oh, you just don't like them. You can eat them. You can eat them. And I thought, yeah, I can, but then I'm going to be rolling with belly aches all night. Why would I want that? And I don't enjoy it anyway. So what are we even arguing about? Like, don't I have a right to not like them and not then choose not to eat them? And I also know that along with that preference, if a friend invited me for Indian food, you and I share a love of Indian food as well, but sometimes it has onion as well. And so I can have a little bit mixed into the sauces, but I said, if there's going to be a lot of big chunks of onion, like I won't be able to partake. So I have to ask, again, boundaries, right? Like, will there be onion? No problem if there is, but I'll eat before I come and just come for the social part, or, whatever else, because who wants to do that to who it's harm to self, even small little things like that, when we accommodate rather than set a boundary.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's been about an hour. Maybe this is a good place to stop. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about codependency, but I think that's an ongoing. I think that's an ongoing thing that
Ooh,
could be a whole other hour long topic. So maybe
yeah.
that could be a part two. Really looking into that, because I know that's codependency is not a therapeutic term. If the closest it gets would be the personality disorder, which is dependent personality disorder. Which, interestingly enough, dependent personality disorder extended between uh, a shared experience turns into like a mass hysteria. And so
Oh,
then there's several people in a group, and this is where you see like the spiritual cults and whatnot, several people in a group believing untruths, or like, because a dependent person um, will put up with the narcissist gaslighting, or the sociopath, or the abuser, whoever it is. And that codependency is like, okay, they must be smarter than me, oh, they must know what they're talking about, they're
yeah.
very confident, whatever else. And those of us who tend to be givers, accommodating, want to keep the peace, harmony, whatever, we can get caught into that and we don't realize that we're part of the problem. We're just as much the problem as the abuser, right? Until we wake up.
Mhm.
And I remember being in my master's, and one woman was like, I really want to study like codependency. And my professor's like, well, that's not really a diagnosis. And here I am thinking, like, what's codependency? Not even aware that I also had a
Oh,
problem with it, right? Because it was
yeah.
so far away from my understanding. So I think, again, another episode, perhaps we could
Yeah.
unravel codependency, because I think that if you are not aware of your own tendency for codependency, and not being able to set these
Mhm,
boundaries, and usually you're primed in it in your childhood, right?
mhm.
And then you end
Yeah.
up meeting somebody who feels oddly familiar, you don't know why, but they just feel like home.
Yeah. Oh.
and 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 then you have to
Yeah.
learn through the more extreme example of this adult person now that you're meeting, to learn that lesson and set those boundaries. And and I think society right now, we're dealing with it, like it's a massive, it's happening. And especially with the polarization, and each side, whatever issue we're talking about, whether it's politics or any other kind of issue, you're not you're not really seeing the polarization, because you're both. And I've tried this out, where people are all complaining about the same thing. The other side's lying, the other side doesn't do this, or
Yeah.
they do this, and
Yeah.
I'm like, you could substitute
Yeah.
whichever side and
Yeah.
it would still be the same complaint.
Yes.
How
Yes.
interesting is that, right? And it's just
Mhm.
like that narcissist kind of like codependent relationship. So I'm just seeing that on a massive scale right now, and I
Mhm.
feel like what we're talking about right now is how you escape that. So you escaped it. You escaped the church. You escaped your marriage. You escaped the mental hospitals. You escaped all of those dysfunctional dynamics,
Mm,
even within the mental health community. And
yeah.
I feel like you have an exit strategy for society right now, and all this stuff that we're dealing
Yeah.
with. I feel like you do, and if people are learning this more and more, the boundaries, the emotional intelligence, the staying calm, allowing people to be who they are, and knowing that you can be who you are, and you can, like you said so beautifully, have what you want. If not all, at least what part of it can you have today? That I mean, it's not, it's maybe it's oversimplified, but that would go a long way right now in the world.
Yes. I
So
agree.
thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for being here. It was really lovely to talk to you, and for you to share your wisdom and your story. And really just honored to have you here and have you in my life. So
Thank
thank you for being
you.
you.
Thank you. Mwah.
All right. Thanks to everybody who joined on Instagram. You can also check this out on YouTube, and I will be reposting this. Good night.
Bye.
Okay. Good night.